All right, welcome to The Explainer. Today we're going to talk about something we all think we know, school. We're going to peel back the layers on the invisible rules that shape our classrooms and look at a really powerful new way of thinking about learning, one that puts community right at the center of it all.
So, let's just jump right in. We're basically looking at a fundamental choice here. On one side, you've got the education most of us grew up with, right? It's all about compliance, bells ringing, kids in neat little rows. But on the other side, there's this vision of what learning could be, something driven by real curiosity, something that happens everywhere, not just in a classroom, and is totally connected to real life. That tension right there is what we're digging into today.
Okay, so to even begin to wrap our heads around this new idea, we first have to see what we're up against. We've got to look at the invisible architecture of the system we have now. You know, all those things we just accept without question. The things that tell us how, where, and when we're supposed to learn.
I mean, really think about it for a second. The bells, the rigid schedules, everyone sitting in rows facing the front. We just assume that's how school is supposed to be, right? It's just normal. But what if I told you none of that was actually designed to help us learn better? What if it's all just a relic, a hand-me-down from a totally different time with totally different goals?
So where did all this stuff come from then? Well, the design of the modern school, believe it or not, comes from two places you might not expect. First, 19th century factories. Think assembly lines and standardization. And second, the Prussian military, which was all about top-down discipline and following orders. So when you put those two together, what do you get? A system that's brilliant at creating compliance, but not so great at fostering curiosity.
Okay, so that's the big picture, the global problem. Now let's bring it down to earth and look at a real-world example. We're going to Indonesia, the fourth largest country on the planet, a place with absolutely massive potential, but one that's also facing a really tough challenge when it comes to education. And when I say tough, I mean it. The numbers here are pretty stark. Indonesia is in the middle of a major learning crisis. Just look at the 2022 PISA scores. These are the big global tests for students. A shocking 71%, 71 of 15-year-olds there don't have basic reading skills, and their math and science scores are way below the average for other developed nations. That's a huge problem.
And this didn't just happen overnight. This is a problem with really deep roots in the country's history. You can trace it all the way back to the Dutch colonial system, which wasn't built to create thinkers. It was built to create compliant government workers. Then, after independence, the big push was just to get more kids into schools, but quality often took a backseat. And then, during the New Order era, that old factory model we talked about, it got supercharged and rolled out across the entire country. So those industrial age ideas got baked into the very foundation of the system.
So, for decades now, Indonesia has been trying to find a way out of this. They've tried a lot of different things, a lot of reforms, a lot of experiments to try and fix the system.
And you can kind of group these attempts into three main buckets. First, you had the big top-down government reforms. Great ideas on paper, but they often just fizzled out when it came to actually making them happen in real schools. Then you have the expensive private schools. Some of them are amazing, but they're just not an option for most people. You can't scale that to a whole country. And finally, you have edtech platforms. They reach tons of students, but many of them just ended up being digital versions of the same old test prep culture.
So all these struggles kind of led people to look for a different answer, to focus on something powerful that was already there. And that brings us to these things called PKBMs, which are basically community learning centers. Now this is the really key part. The goal isn't to get rid of the regular school system. The idea is to build around it, to enhance it, by creating this whole support system that's actually owned and run by the community.
Okay, so what does that even look like? What happens to learning when you take it outside the four walls of a classroom and let the community shape it? Well, let me tell you a few stories because that's where it gets really interesting.
Okay, take an 8-year-old named May. She loves exploring tide pools. Now in this model, that's not just a cute hobby. It becomes a full-blown research project. She gets connected with actual marine biologists, she learns how to analyze water samples for microplastics, and then she presents what she found to her whole community. All of a sudden, science, math, environmentalism, it's all connected because she's working on a real problem that matters to her and her neighbors. Or how about Marcus? He's 15, and he was just completely checked out of high school. For him, this was an absolute game changer. He's passionate about social justice, so he starts a podcast. He finds a mentor in the community who teaches him audio engineering. He starts interviewing local leaders. Suddenly, he's not just a student, he's creating something with real impact, giving a voice to other young people. That's learning that actually matters to him.
And it's not just for older kids either. This works for the little ones too. There was this 6-year-old David who came in with a lot of anxiety.
but he was fascinated by insects. So what happened? He became the community garden's official bug expert. That fascination gave him a purpose, and that purpose helped him channel his anxiety into confidence. He started teaching other people. That's an incredible transformation.
So look, these stories are amazing, they're inspiring, and it's easy to get swept up in them. But we have to be credible here. We have to take a step back and ask the hard questions. It's great to be optimistic, but we also have to be realistic, right?
And honestly, it's totally fair to be skeptical about all this. Critics bring up some really important points, and we have to look at them head on before we start saying this is the magical answer to everything.
So you've got this amazing promise, right? Learning that's driven by curiosity, connected to the community, awesome. But the critiques are pretty heavy. Like, how do you make sure the quality is good everywhere if you don't have standardized tests and rules? How on earth do you scale something that depends so much on local volunteers? And maybe the biggest one, what stops this from becoming a thing that only helps wealthy families who already have the time and resources? That's a huge risk.
But here's the thing. This isn't just some pie-in-the-sky idea. It's been done before, and at a massive scale. You can look at Colombia's Escuela Nueva program, which totally changed education in rural areas. Or look at the BRAC program in Bangladesh. We're talking millions of kids. What these places show us is that it is possible. But you need a few key things to make it work. You need the government to actually support it. You need professional ways to make sure the quality stays high, and it has to be deeply, truly integrated into the local culture.
And that really brings us full circle, back to this one final, powerful question from an educator named Nikki Erawan. The point here isn't to just find some perfect, one-size-fits-all system that we can copy and paste. The question is much more personal than that. It's a question for every single one of us. What education system will you help create?